I never thought I'd be the kind of person to burn bridges, but sometimes bridges burn themselves. My name is Eleanor Hartwell, and at 72 years old, I've learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all, it's just enabling one to dress up with good intentions. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and please tell me and others, what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late? Share it in the comments below. Thanks. The story begins with my nephew, Marcus. His parents, my brother and sister-in-law, died in a plane crash when he was 15. I was 57 then, recently widowed myself, working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Taking in a grieving teenager wasn't exactly in my retirement plans, but family is family, or so I thought. Marcus was a good kid, mostly. Quiet, studious, the kind of boy who said, "Yes ma'am," and helped carry groceries without being asked. I worked extra hours to pay for his college, sold my late husband's vintage car collection to cover his textbooks and dorm fees. When he graduated with a degree in marketing, I cried harder than his own mother would have. He moved to Seattle after college, got a job at a tech startup, and slowly, our weekly phone calls became monthly, then sporadic. I understood. Young people need to spread their wings. I kept sending birthday cards with checks tucked inside, Christmas packages filled with his favorite cookies, care packages during flu season. The responses grew shorter, but I told myself he was just busy building his life. Then came the engagement announcement. Not a phone call, not even a text message, a glossy card in the mail with embossed lettering announcing that Marcus Hartwell and Sophia Blackwood were getting married. The wedding was set for June in Napa Valley. I stared at that card for a long time, noting how formal it felt, how distant. But I was happy for him. I really was. When Marcus finally called 2 weeks later, his voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something big. "Aunt Ellie," he said, using the childhood nickname that always melted my heart. "I hope you got our announcement." I did. "She sounds lovely. When do I get to meet her?" There was a pause. "Well, that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. The wedding is going to be pretty expensive. Sophia's family has very specific ideas about venues and vendors, and her father is already contributing a lot, but we're still short on the budget." I waited, sensing where this was heading. "I was wondering if you might be able to help us out. I know it's a lot to ask, but you always said you wanted to see me settled and happy." The number he mentioned made my breath catch. $45,000. It was nearly half of my retirement savings, money I'd been carefully nurturing for 15 years since my husband's death. But looking at it another way, it was also everything I had left to give to the boy I'd raised as my own son. "Let me think about it," I said. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and bank statements spread out like tarot cards predicting my future. After the wedding contribution, I'd have enough left for maybe 10 years of comfortable living, assuming no major health crises or economic disasters. It was risky, but Marcus was the closest thing to a child I'd ever have. If I couldn't spend my money on his happiness, what was the point of having it? I called him the next morning. "I'll transfer the money this week." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Aunt Ellie, I don't know what to say. Thank you. This means everything to us. Just promise me you'll be happy," I said. "That's all the thanks I need." The wedding planning consumed the next 8 months. Marcus would call occasionally with updates. They'd booked the vineyard, found the perfect caterer, hired a photographer who'd shot celebrity weddings. Sophia had found her dream dress, a custom creation that cost more than my first car. Everything sounded magical, expensive, and completely outside my world. I started shopping for my own outfit early, wanting to look perfect for Marcus's big day. I found a beautiful navy dress with delicate beading, bought new shoes, even splurged on a professional hair appointment. I imagined dancing with Marcus, meeting Sophia's family, finally being part of a celebration instead of just funding it from the sidelines. The formal invitation arrived 6 weeks before the wedding. Heavy cardstock, calligraphy that looked like art, tissue paper inserts explaining the weekend's events. There was a welcome dinner on Friday, the ceremony on Saturday afternoon, and a farewell brunch on Sunday. I marked all 3 events on my calendar in red ink. But as the weeks passed, something felt off. Marcus's calls became even less frequent. When I asked about details, where I should stay, what time to arrive, whether I needed to bring anything, his answers were vague. "We're still working out the logistics," he'd say. "I'll get back to you." 3 weeks before the wedding, I decided to book my own hotel room. When I called the Vineyard's recommended accommodations, they were all booked solid. I tried 6 other hotels in the area. Same story. Finally, a helpful desk clerk at the 7th hotel said, "Oh, you must be with the Hartwell Blackwood wedding. I'm sorry, but that entire weekend was blocked out months ago for wedding guests only." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Blocked out by whom? The wedding party reserved blocks of rooms at all the local hotels. You'd need to be on their guest list to book. I hung up and immediately called Marcus. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later, then again that evening. Finally, he called back the next day. "Aunt Ellie, hey, sorry I missed your calls. Things are crazy with work and wedding prep. Marcus, I tried to book a hotel room for the wedding, but everywhere is blocked out. How do I get on the guest list for the room blocks?" Another one of those long pauses. "Oh, right. The hotel thing. Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about that." My heart started beating faster. "Talk to me about what?" "The wedding has gotten really complicated. Sophia's family is very particular about the guest list. They've had to make some tough decisions about numbers." I gripped the phone tighter. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the guest list is smaller than we originally planned. Much smaller. It's really just immediate family and very close friends." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Marcus, I raised you. I paid for this wedding. How am I not an immediate family?" "You are family, of course you are. But Sophia's parents are paying for most of it now, and they have final say on the guest list. They don't really know you, and they wanted to keep things intimate." I couldn't speak. The boy I'd tucked into bed, helped with homework, cheered at graduation, was uninviting me to the wedding I'd funded. "Aunt Ellie. Are you there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Look, we'll have a big celebration dinner when we get back from the honeymoon. Just the 3 of us. It'll be more personal that way. More personal than your wedding. You know what I mean. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Sophia's family has very specific ideas about how things should be done." "And what about your ideas? What about what you want?" "I want Sophia to be happy. And if keeping the wedding small makes her happy, then that's what we're doing." After I hung up, I sat in my living room for 2 hours without moving. The navy dress hung in my closet, tags still attached. The hotel confirmation emails I'd never received sat unsent in some wedding planner's computer. The boy I'd sacrificed for had chosen his new family over the woman who'd made his new life possible. That night, I called my bank. "I'd like to stop payment on a check," I told the customer service representative. "What's the check number and amount?" I gave her the information for the $45,000 transfer I'd authorized but that hadn't been processed yet due to the large amount requiring additional verification. "May I ask the reason for stopping payment?" "Change of circumstances," I said. The next morning, Marcus called in a panic. "Aunt Ellie, there's a problem with the money transfer. The bank says it was stopped." "That's correct. But why? We've already put deposits down based on that money. The caterer, the photographer, the venue, they're all expecting payment." Then you'd better figure out how to pay them. I don't understand. Are you upset about the guest list? Because we can work something out. No, Marcus. We can't work something out. You made your choice. You chose Sophia's family's money and opinions over the woman who raised you. That's fine. That's your right. But you don't get to have both. Aunt Ellie, please. You're being unreasonable. It's just one day. It's not just one day. It's the day that was supposed to represent your commitment to family, to the people who love you. Instead, it represents your willingness to throw away 15 years of sacrifice for the approval of people who've known you for 2 years. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fair would have been a phone call asking my opinion before you planned a wedding with my money. Fair would have been including me in decisions about an event I was funding. Fair would have been remembering that I'm the only parent you have left. You're not my parent, he said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Everything I'd believed about our relationship, about love and family and sacrifice, crumbled in that moment. You're right, I said. I'm not. I'm just the woman who gave up her retirement security for someone else's dream wedding. But that stops now. I hung up and immediately called my attorney. I need to change my will, I told her. The wedding happened without me, obviously. I know because Sophia posted photos on social media, a beautiful ceremony in golden California sunlight, the bride radiant in her expensive dress, the groom handsome in his custom tuxedo. They looked happy. They looked perfect. They looked like people who'd never known struggle or sacrifice or the weight of choosing between your own security and someone else's dreams. I spent that Saturday working in my garden, planting bulbs that would bloom the following spring. My hands were dirty, my back ached, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, and toasted my own freedom. Marcus called a week after the honeymoon. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next day, and the day after that. Finally, I answered. Aunt Ellie, we need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. I know you're hurt, but you're family. We can work through this. I was family when you needed money. I stopped being family when you needed a guest list. That's not how it was. That's exactly how it was. You made a choice, Marcus. You chose Sophia's family's approval over my feelings. You chose their money over my sacrifice. You chose their version of family over the woman who actually raised you. Those were your choices. Now live with them. I can't believe you're being this petty over one day. Petty? The word sparked something dangerous in my chest. I gave you 15 years of my life. I worked overtime to pay for your college. I sold my husband's car collection to cover your expenses. I gave you nearly half my retirement savings for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. And you call me petty. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said. Just like you meant it when you said I'm not your parent. Just like you meant it when you chose them over me. The difference is, I'm finally listening. I hung up and blocked his number. The months that followed were the quietest of my life, but not in a lonely way. In a peaceful way. I started taking art classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was working extra hours to support Marcus. I joined a book club, made friends with women my own age who understood the particular challenges of being widowed and childless in a world that assumes everyone has someone. I used some of the money I'd saved by not funding the wedding to take a trip to Ireland, something my late husband and I had always planned but never managed. I walked the cliffs of Moher, kissed the Blarney Stone, and drank Guinness in pubs older than my country. I sent postcards to my book club friends but not to Marcus. 6 months after the wedding, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Sophia's handwriting, I assumed, since it was too neat to be Marcus's. "Dear Aunt Eleanor," it began, and I almost stopped reading right there. She'd never called me Aunt Eleanor before, we'd barely spoken during their brief engagement. The letter was 3 pages of carefully crafted apology, explaining how the wedding planning had gotten out of hand, how her parents had taken over, how she tried to advocate for including me but had been overruled. She wrote about how much Marcus missed me, how guilty he felt, how they both hoped we could find a way to reconcile. The last paragraph was the most interesting. "We know that family is about more than blood, and we consider you part of ours. We hope you'll give us a chance to prove that." I read the letter twice, then filed it in my desk drawer next to my updated will, the one that left everything to charity instead of to the nephew who taught me that love without respect is just manipulation with better marketing. A year passed. Then another. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Marcus and Sophia had bought a house, that Sophia was pregnant, that Marcus had gotten a promotion. I felt nothing about these updates, not happiness, not sadness, just the mild interest you might feel hearing about strangers' lives. On what would have been their 2nd anniversary, Marcus showed up at my door. I saw him through the peephole, older-looking, tired, holding what appeared to be a baby carrier. I didn't open the door. "Aunt Ellie, I know you're in there. Please. I just want to talk." I sat in my living room and waited. After 20 minutes, he left. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Always with the baby, always with the same pleading tone. I never answered the door, but I watched from the window as he sat on my porch steps, sometimes for an hour or more, just waiting. The 4th time he came, he brought Sophia. I watched them argue quietly on my front walk, saw her gesture toward the house, and saw him shake his head. Finally, she took the baby and left, and Marcus sat alone on my steps until dark. That night, he slipped a letter under my door. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," it began. "I know I made choices that hurt you, that betrayed everything you did for me. I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough, but I need you to know that not a day goes past that I don't regret how I handled the wedding." He wrote about becoming a father, about understanding now what it meant to sacrifice for someone you love. He wrote about Sophia's parents, how controlling they'd been, how he'd been too weak to stand up to them. He wrote about missing me, about wanting his daughter to know her great-aunt, about hoping it wasn't too late to rebuild what he'd destroyed. "I can't undo what I did," the letter concluded. "But I can promise that if you give me another chance, I'll never choose anyone else's approval over your place in my life again. You raised me to be better than the man I was during the wedding planning. Please let me prove I can be that better man." I kept the letter for a week before responding. Not because I was considering reconciliation, but because I wanted to be sure my response came from a place of clarity rather than anger. Finally, I wrote back. "Marcus, I appreciate your letter and your apology. I believe you're sincere, and I believe you've learned from your mistakes. But some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. You didn't just hurt my feelings or exclude me from a party. You showed me that 15 years of love and sacrifice meant less to you than 2 years of new relationships. You taught me that I was valuable to you only when you needed something from me. Those aren't lessons I can unlearn, and they're not wounds that heal with time. I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you're a father. I hope you raise your daughter to understand that love requires respect, that family means showing up even when it's inconvenient, and that some choices have permanent consequences. I wish you well, but I wish you well from a distance. Please don't come to my house again." I mailed the letter and felt something settle in my chest, not sadness, not relief, just completion. 3 years later, I'm 75 and living exactly the life I choose. I volunteer at the animal shelter, have a small circle of close friends, and take one international trip each year. My house is decorated exactly how I like it, my schedule belongs entirely to me, and my bank account reflects my priorities rather than someone else's dreams. Sometimes people ask if I regret my decision, or if I miss having family. The answer is complicated. I miss the Marcus I thought I knew, the boy who seemed grateful for my sacrifices and genuinely loved me. But that Marcus may have been a creation of my own hopes rather than reality. The real Marcus was someone who could accept 15 years of devotion and then casually discard the giver when she became inconvenient. I don't miss being taken for granted. I don't miss being valued only for what I could provide. I don't miss the anxiety of wondering if my love was enough, if my sacrifices were appreciated, if the person I devoted my life to actually cared about me as a person rather than as a resource. What I have now is something I never had before: peace. The peace that comes from knowing that every relationship in my life is based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The peace that comes from understanding my own worth and refusing to accept less than I deserve. The peace that comes from choosing myself, finally, after decades of choosing everyone else first. I funded a wedding with my savings, and then I didn't get an invite to the wedding. But in the end, that uninvitation was the greatest gift Marcus ever gave me. It freed me from the illusion that love without boundaries is sustainable, that sacrifice without appreciation is noble, that family is defined by what you're willing to endure rather than what you're willing to respect. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who learned to value herself as much as she valued others. I see someone who discovered that the most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. I see a person who chose dignity over desperation, self-respect over self-sacrifice. And for the first time in my life, that's enough.